Out of concern for her boyfriend's career, she ended up serving 5 years in prison for him. Yet, upon her release, her boyfriend betrayed her. Yoo-young decided to seek revenge. The real question is, why did she trust her boyfriend so blindly? Yoo-young and Do-hoon had been in a relationship for 7 years. Throughout this period, Yoo-young worked tirelessly to support herself and help her boyfriend prepare for the civil service exam. No matter the weather, she worked diligently without complaint. She spent her mornings at a toll booth and her evenings driving a rental car. In her free time, she also took care of Do-hoon's parents, who were very fond of her. However, after Do-hoon passed the civil service exam and became a prosecutor, his mother considered Yoo-young unsuitable for her son because she lacked a stable job. As a result, she persistently tried to find new partners for him. Despite this, Do-hoon owed much of his success to Yoo-young. When he couldn't afford his tuition, she provided financial support, and the car he used for work was even borrowed from her. Despite his mother's objections, Do-hoon felt that Yoo-young's sacrifices deserved recognition and, therefore, he proposed to her. Unexpectedly, their car was involved in an accident. Do-hoon went to investigate, and after some time, Yoo-young anxiously joined him. He reassured her that they had only collided with a drum. Seeing that this was the case, Yoo-young trusted his words without question. She suggested calling the police, but Do-hoon, who had consumed some alcohol, insisted that it would lead to trouble. Yoo-young agreed, not realizing they had actually struck a pregnant woman. Do-hoon noticed the woman was critically injured but, wanting to avoid trouble, chose to ignore her. The woman's boyfriend, Min-hyuk, who was the son of a wealthy tycoon, was devastated by the sight of his injured partner and child. He requested that the police find the person responsible. The following morning, Yoo-young, in her naivety, took the car in for repairs. The police examined footage from a nearby camera and identified that 3 cars had passed the accident scene. As Yoo-young was the registered owner of the car, the police came to question her. They inquired whether she had been involved in an accident the previous night. Yoo-young confessed and provided all the details. To protect her prosecutor boyfriend, who had been drinking, she didn't want him to face any consequences. Thus, Yoo-young naively accepted the blame and admitted she was the driver. The prosecutor assigned to the case was Do-hoon, who had deceived Yoo-young by claiming he hadn't seen the injured woman. Do-hoon had led Yoo-young to believe they had merely crashed into a drum, and she had fully believed him. They had been working together for 7 years, and Do-hoon couldn't afford to jeopardize his position as a prosecutor due to this incident. As a result, Yoo-young decided to plead guilty to unintentional manslaughter, hoping that reconciling with Do-hoon might spare her from incarceration. Do-hoon also promised to do everything he could to secure a minimal sentence for her. The next morning, Yoo-young rose early to help her father at the bakery. Meanwhile, Do-hoon did not attempt to contact the victim's family to make amends. Instead, he threatened that if justice wasn't served properly, he would use his influence to have Do-hoon removed from his position. Although Do-hoon felt deep regret for Yoo-young, he chose to avoid falling back into poverty and let her take the blame. After collecting enough evidence, the police issued a warrant for Yoo-young's arrest. Mr. Kang was shocked and frightened when he saw his daughter being taken away. He sought out his son-in-law and learned the full story. Mr. Kang then tried to gather funds and went to the victim's mother to offer an apology. He knelt down and begged for forgiveness, but Mrs. Hong could not accept it. She was still deeply hurt by her daughter's suffering and wanted the perpetrator to face consequences. She rejected the money and threw it back at Mr. Kang, who fell to the ground, feeling hopeless and lost. Yoo-young's trial took place, and the prosecutor recommended a 5-year prison sentence for her for the death of a pregnant woman. The other inmates harbored animosity towards her, and, on her first night, Yoo-young was subjected to severe brutality. Following a medical examination, the doctor found out that Yoo-young was pregnant, and she soon gave birth to a baby boy while in prison. Despite the hardships, Yoo-young was determined to raise her child on her own, not wanting her prosecutor boyfriend's reputation to be tarnished. Her son became her main source of motivation. The shock of Yoo-young's imprisonment took a toll on her father, who could no longer care for himself. Do-hoon continued to visit him regularly and, during one visit from a charity group, intentionally brought a large amount of food for Yoo-young and checked on his son. Noting that Yoo-young had turned her life around and had a child to care for, the prison administration requested amnesty and permitted her early release. Min-hyuk, who was outraged that Yoo-young was pardoned after only 2 years, arranged a meeting with Do-hoon. He threatened that if Do-hoon opposed Min-hyuk, he would be promoted to a higher position. Conversely, if Do-hoon supported Min-hyuk, he would ensure that Do-hoon lost his current position. The pardon was granted. Yoo-young urgently apologized for her past mistakes and promised that once released, she would seek forgiveness from the victim's mother. She also vowed to take proper care of her son and her ailing father. However, when she returned to prison, the guards found bruises on her son's body, which led them to suspect she had abused him, resulting in her son being taken away. Fearful and unaware of her son's whereabouts, Yoo-young called Do-hoon for help, asking him to locate her child. Min-hyuk was pleased with Do-hoon's vote against him and rewarded him with a fine watch as a token of appreciation for his decision. 3 years later, Yoo-young was officially released from prison. Do-hoon arrived to pick her up, but Min-hyuk was furious when he saw their reunion. Yoo-young's first wish upon her release was to be reunited with her son, but instead, she received the news of his death. Do-hoon informed her that her son had passed away from sepsis and had kept this from her to spare her the agony. Do-hoon then took Yoo-young to the location where her son's ashes were scattered, giving her a chance to say a final goodbye to her child. Yoo-young felt utterly lost and could hardly grasp the harsh reality she faced. Do-hoon's mother came to offer her superficial comfort, advising her to make more effort, stay positive, and live her life. However, behind Yoo-young's back, she scolded her son to be wary and avoid wasting time on someone with a criminal record. That night, Yoo-young bought a cake and went to the river to reflect on the brief time she had spent with her son. Min-hyuk observed her from a distance. Since Yoo-young went to prison, her father had developed dementia. To cover her father's medical costs, Yoo-young had searched extensively for a job, but finding employment with a criminal record proved to be extremely challenging. Amid her despair, Yoo-young received a phone call offering her a job. However, the call was from Min-hyuk's assistant, and Min-hyuk had arranged a party to publicly humiliate them both. Min-hyuk attended the event with his fiancée, whom he was about to marry. Do-hoon saw Yoo-young at the party but, to avoid embarrassment, chased her away. Later, Do-hoon dealt with the situation in a diplomatic manner. When Yoo-young returned home, a group of creditors demanded payment. Her family had accumulated debt to cover her father's medical expenses, and even their house had been sold. The new owner was Min-hyuk, who insisted that Yoo-young vacate the property within 3 days. Knowing Min-hyuk was the lover of the accident victim, Yoo-young felt unable to ask for any more help during this challenging time. Unaware of Yoo-young's situation, Do-hoon was occupied with comforting his old friend Se-yeon, a wealthy woman. With no relatives or financial resources available, Yoo-young had no choice but to bring her father to Do-hoon's house to seek assistance. Do-hoon's mother was extremely displeased and reprimanded Yoo-young, hoping Do-hoon would cut ties with her. Fortunately, Do-hoon's father stepped in to offer help. Yoo-young then went to see the victim's mother, who immediately threw water at her and drove her away. Despite this, Yoo-young bowed and pleaded for forgiveness. That night, Yoo-young returned home, and Do-hoon helped care for her father. Despite still having feelings for Yoo-young, Do-hoon grew closer to her, which accidentally exposed the burn scar she had received from prison abuse. Do-hoon was heartbroken, but Yoo-young insisted she no longer felt any pain. Do-hoon, visibly disturbed, gently placed his hand on Yoo-young's wound to offer comfort. He then went out drinking with his father, advising him to stop, as their continued association would only lead to further suffering and moral decay. While reflecting on their lost child, the next morning, Yoo-young's father went missing. Do-hoon instructed her to report it to the police while he conducted his own search. Eventually, Do-hoon located him, but her father revealed that he was aware Yoo-young had been imprisoned and that it was Do-hoon, not someone else, who had caused the accident and fled. Concerned that Yoo-young's father might blackmail him, Do-hoon devised a malicious plan. Unaware of this, Yoo-young spent the entire night searching for her father. The following day, she received a call informing her that her father had been found. Yoo-young hurriedly left but ran into Min-hyuk. It was late and finding a taxi was challenging. Knowing her father was in trouble, Min-hyuk generously offered her a ride. When Yoo-young arrived, she found her father lying there, his body cold and covered in blood and bruises. Yoo-young felt a choking grief in her heart. Min-hyuk observed Yoo-young's tragic situation and realized she was embroiled in a scandal with Congressman Kim, which had nearly cost Do-hoon his job. Yoo-young's father's funeral was conducted hastily and attended by only 2 friends from prison. The following day, after her father's burial, Yoo-young needed Do-hoon the most, but he was nowhere to be found. Perhaps understanding the gravity of the situation, Yoo-young suggested they break up. She no longer wished to continue their relationship, seeing it as a way to untangle the emotional knot between them. Do-hoon remained silent, neither consenting nor objecting. With no relatives or home, Yoo-young had to stay with Hae-ri, who had been a significant support during her time in prison. Se-yeon had been in love with Min-hyuk since school, but Min-hyuk had always loved Ji, despite her passing many years ago. Min-hyuk still deeply missed her. Concerned that her own self-esteem might suffer if she didn't have him, Se-yeon decided to make Min-hyuk's life difficult. She presented Min-hyuk with a contract stating that their marriage would be purely ceremonial, with no interference in each other's personal lives. Today, Yoo-young found out that her debts had been transferred to Min-hyuk's name. She rushed to confront him, asking for explanations. Min-hyuk revealed that he had taken on the debt in order to torment her. In response, Yoo-young left him her phone number, vowing to repay the debt no matter what. Do-hoon, now indifferent to Yoo-young, visited the art office and began flirting with Se-yeon. He recognized that she was the key to his future, a wealthy woman who had helped him avoid poverty. The following day, Do-hoon officially resigned from his position as a prosecutor, explaining to his parents that the government's salary was insufficient and that he had endured many hardships. He did not want his parents to work so hard any longer. Afterwards, he applied to become a lawyer, seeking to join Mr. Han's firm, one of the wealthiest tycoon families. Do-hoon gathered a stack of documents to aid in his application. These documents contained information that would help Chairman Han exploit his opponent's weaknesses. Impressed, Mr. Han agreed to bring Do-hoon into the company. Min Hyuk, observing from a distance, noted Do-hoon's audacity. Since joining the company, Do-hoon had persistently sought ways to get closer to Se-yeon, despite not having genuine feelings for her. Min Hyuk, wanting to protect Se-yeon from someone like Do-hoon, continually sought ways to keep them apart. Seeing Min Hyuk's efforts, Sean defended Do-hoon, which only enraged Min Hyuk, leading him to leave in frustration. That night, Do-hoon gave his parents a substantial amount of money so they could open a store. His parents were thrilled, pleased that he was now employed at a prestigious company. Meanwhile, Yoo-young accidentally ran into a former prisoner on the street. This prisoner was the one who had reported Yoo-young for allegedly abusing her son, which had led to their separation. After learning about her son's death, the prisoner felt immense regret. She had only followed Min Hyuk's instructions, who had promised her early release from prison and assured that her son would be well taken care of, so she had complied. Hearing this, Yoo-young immediately suspected Min Hyuk, as he was the only one with such a deep-seated hatred towards her. Upon revisiting the old evidence, Min Hyuk realized that Do-hoon and Yoo-young had been together on the night of the accident. Min Hyuk sent Do-hoon a gift box, and seeing the photo inside, Dun's face turned pale with fear. Although the case documents indicated that Yoo-young was driving alone, Do-hoon worried there might be missing evidence. Consequently, he went to the police station to review the case file, unaware that his every move was being reported to Min Hyuk by the police. After reviewing the CCTV footage, Do-hoon discovered that a car from Chairman Han's group had filmed him leaving to repair his car on the night of the accident. That evening, when the office was empty, Do-hoon sneaked into the surveillance room at the corporation and found the video of him driving that day. Delighted, he quickly deleted the footage. On the other side, learning about her son's indirect death only deepened Yoo-young's sympathy for the victim's mother. Although she wasn't directly responsible, she still sought a way to ask for forgiveness. Yoo-young began working for her a few days a week, and over time, Ji's mother became less harsh. Min Hyuk kept a close watch on everything Yoo-young did. Under the pretense of assisting Se-yeon with work, Do-hoon visited her private office. When he fell asleep, Se-yeon gently covered him with a blanket. Observing this, Do-hoon took her hand and confessed his feelings, asking what he could do to be worthy of her. Feeling the awkwardness of the moment, Se-yeon quickly turned away. Noticing her reaction, Do-hoon packed up his things and prepared to leave. Min Hyuk's secretary arrived at the location shown in the photo, as Do-hoon had planned a party for a proposal that day. The boss recalled clearly that they had been there together and had taken many souvenir photos. After verifying this information, Min Hyuk furiously confronted Do-hoon, grabbing him by the collar and vowing to expose him. Se-yeon was unaware that Do-hoon was the actual culprit, so she continued to support him. The next day, Min Hyuk confronted Yoo-young and urged her to tell the truth. However, she insisted on taking the blame to protect Do-hoon, saying she didn't regret sacrificing herself. Yoo-young hoped Min Hyuk would forgive her and promised to gradually repay the debt. Min Hyuk, thinking she might be heartbroken, decided to give her more time. With a friend's help, Yoo-young found a job at a restaurant, unaware that Min Hyuk owned it. Not wanting her to feel uncomfortable, Min Hyuk observed her from a distance. Do-hoon, knowing Yoo-young was working at Min Hyuk's restaurant, worried they might grow close and that she might reveal the truth. He asked her to quit the job, but Yoo-young, understanding how difficult it was to find employment, chose to ignore him. Suddenly, a police officer approached Yoo-young, suspecting her of trademark fabrication. The restaurant manager, aware of her criminal record, didn't want any trouble and fired her. Meanwhile, Min Hyuk discovered that Do-hoon had secretly deleted the video. He instructed his staff to tell Do-hoon that any recordings from the past 5 years could be restored. Do-hoon fell into the trap and, finding an opportunity, broke into the surveillance room to permanently erase the data from the trash. At that moment, Min Hyuk arrived. Caught off guard, Do-hoon quickly claimed he needed the data for an upcoming meeting, but Min Hyuk found this amusing. Min Hyuk directly confronted Do-hoon, asserting that no matter what secrets he was hiding, they would be uncovered. Do-hoon attempted to remain calm, asserting his innocence and claiming he had nothing to fear. After discovering where Yoo-young had moved, Min Hyuk immediately went to find her. He demanded that she return to work to pay off her debt, insisting she would earn money and send it to him regularly. Seeing her stubbornness, Min Hyuk threatened to sell her father's bakery, which was her most valuable possession. In the end, she had no choice but to agree and return to work. The next morning, Yoo-young went back to work. Her colleagues were upset and gossiped about her, but she ignored their comments and focused on her tasks. That day, the restaurant hosted a new dish tasting session with guests, including Se-yeon and Do-hoon. When Min Hyuk learned of this, he hurried to the restaurant and asked Yoo-young to leave. However, she refused to be irresponsible and decided to stay. During the event, Se-yeon, who was very upset, made a sarcastic comment to Yoo-young. Seeing this, Min Hyuk rushed to help her, and Do-hoon also met with Yoo-young privately. Do-hoon accused her of trying to embarrass him. Yoo-young explained that she was working there to repay Min Hyuk's debt. Do-hoon, however, failed to understand her suffering and said that every time he encountered her, he felt exhausted. He criticized her for enduring so much yet letting such cruel words affect her. Yoo-young now saw Do-hoon's true nature. Disappointed, She left and observed how Min-hyuk brought her to work and stood up to protect her, which made Se-yeon very uncomfortable. Min-hyuk explained nothing to Se-yeon, simply stating that their marriage was just a contract and she should not interfere in his affairs. When she felt tired, Yoo-young took out her father's shirt for comfort and happened to find a purchase receipt from the day he passed away. Rushing to that place, the shop owner confirmed that her father often bought cakes there and saw Do-hoon come to pick him up on that fateful day. Devastated by this revelation, Yoo-young was at a loss. Min-hyuk then asked her to work at his house, offering a simple cleaning job, and his sister appreciated Yoo-young's cooking skills. After finishing her work, Yoo-young suggested returning to the restaurant. However, Min-hyuk, wanting her to have time to rest, made an excuse. He claimed he wanted to know the ending of a novel and asked Yoo-young to read and summarize it for him. Yoo-young had no choice but to comply. On the other hand, Do-hoon was trying to flirt with Se-yeon, but it wasn't easy. She only considered him a friend. The next day, Yoo-young went to Min-hyuk's house to work. She accidentally saw Min-hyuk's signature, revealing that it was Min-hyuk, not Do-hoon, who took her to the hospital and paid the fees on the day she fainted. At that moment, Min-hyuk woke up. Yoo-young, feeling confused, explained that she was only taking the blanket to be laundered. After finishing her work, Yoo-young informed Min-hyuk that she would return to the restaurant the next day because she didn't want her colleagues to bear the burden of her absence. When she returned home, Hwan was already waiting. Hwan couldn't sleep, haunted by the promise to live in remorse for the rest of her life because of her son's death. At this moment, Do-hoon also came to find Yoo-young. He suspected she had said something to Min-hyuk, as Min-hyuk was reinvestigating the case. Unable to contain himself, Do-hoon accused Yoo-young of being the driver and tried to shift all the responsibility onto her. Yoo-jong was stunned that the person she sacrificed so much for was now the one responsible for the deaths of her son and father. Returning home, she was filled with regret and self-blame. Min-hyuk came to comfort her, explaining that when he lost the person he loved, he used revenge and hatred as excuses to continue living. He encouraged Yoo-young to follow his lead in overcoming her grief and promised to help her take revenge on Do-hoon if she told the truth about that day. However, Yoo-young was reluctant to revisit the past. The next day, Yoo-young went to find Do-hoon, but he coldly called the security guard to drag her away. Yoo-young did not give up. When Do-hoon left, she rushed in front of his car, claiming to have seen the recording. Do-hoon, unfazed, admitted that her father was too annoying and blamed Yoo-young for not taking proper care of him, suggesting she should have placed him in a nursing home. Furious, Yoo-young demanded Do-hoon stop the car, but he drove faster. They struggled with the steering wheel, nearly causing an accident. Only then did Do-hoon stop. Yoo-young pulled Do-hoon out and forced him to kneel down and apologize to her father, who had always treated Do-hoon like his own son. Do-hoon, however, angrily shouted that he had no regrets and that Yoo-young lacked sufficient evidence to incriminate him. Yoo-young vowed to bring him down at all costs, making him lose everything and beg for forgiveness. Meanwhile, news broke that Min-hyuk's father was in the US for surgery, causing the group's stock to decline. Min-hyuk was furious upon hearing this from the press. His secretary explained that this was a request from the chairman, who hoped Min-hyuk would prove strong enough to lead the company in his absence. Do-hoon seized the opportunity and deliberately leaked company documents. Although Min-hyuk was enraged, he couldn't take action against Do-hoon without evidence. Unbeknownst to Min-hyuk, Se-yeon was the one orchestrating the situation, hoping to force Min-hyuk to beg her for help. On the other side, Yoo-young was tirelessly researching new sauce recipes to help Min-hyuk secure an investment contract for the restaurant. Having made salad sauces with her father since childhood, she had a wealth of experience. Min-hyuk was deeply grateful for her support. The next morning, news broke that the recording had been recovered. Do-hoon rushed to check, only to find Min-hyuk already waiting. Min-hyuk showed Do-hoon the recording, which clearly proved that Do-hoon was driving. However, Do-hoon boldly claimed that the scene wasn't filmed near the incident and thus couldn't prove anything. Seeing Do-hoon's frantic attitude and Min-hyuk's satisfaction, Do-hoon was furious. He went to Yoo-young and scolded her, insisting that he never asked her to confess on his behalf. It was her own decision. He told her to stop bringing up the past to torment him. In Yoo-young's eyes, there was only resentment. She advised him to enjoy his time while he could because she would be the one to drag him to hell. That night, Se-yeon instructed Do-hoon to stop President Yang from signing a contract with Min-hyuk at all costs. The next morning, when Min-hyuk and Yoo-young arrived at the restaurant, they saw Do-hoon already there. President Yang was very satisfied after trying the restaurant's new sauce, but Do-hoon tried to sow discord by highlighting negative aspects. Seeing the lack of internal unity, President Yang was displeased and decided to send everyone home, stating she would make her decision later. Coincidentally, that day was Min-hyuk's birthday. Yoo-young prepared to make a cake for him, and everyone gathered to wish him a happy birthday. Although simple, it was the warmest birthday Min Hyuk had ever experienced. The next morning, Yoo-young brought a box of cakes with the new sauce to President Yang. The night before, her restaurant received a request for home service. The requester was none other than Se-yeon, who organized a birthday party for Min Hyuk to irritate him. Seeing Yoo-young's hard work and pent-up anger, Min Hyuk asked her to leave. He also thanked her for the box of cakes, which convinced President Yang to sign the contract. Yoo-young happily congratulated Min Hyuk. Witnessing this scene, Se-yeon sarcastically commented that Yoo-young had killed Ji-hee. Although deeply hurt, Yoo-young chose not to explain and decided to leave. Min Hyuk quickly chased after her, making Se-yeon extremely angry. Se-yeon had known Min Hyuk since childhood and recognized the look of affection he had for Yoo-young. When Min Hyuk brought Yoo-young home, he couldn't hide his emotions and kissed her. Yoo-young tried to resist at first but eventually accepted the kiss. The next morning, when Yoo-young met Min Hyuk, she told him to forget about the previous day. However, Min Hyuk insisted that what he did was not a mistake. After work, Yoo-young visited her former colleague at the toll booth and asked for a photo of Do-hoon's car from the day her father had the accident. Fortunately, the surgery went smoothly, and President Han returned to Korea. Hearing about Min Hyuk's involvement with Yoo-young, President Han asked his assistant to bring her to meet him. He thanked Yoo-young for helping Min Hyuk secure the contract but insisted she stay away from Min Hyuk because his son was to marry Se-yeon. Humiliated by everyone, Yoo-young felt embarrassed and apologized before leaving. Min Hyuk, furious, chased after her, but she refused to open the door for him. Min Hyuk assured her that he wouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past and vowed to protect her, but Yoo-young didn't want that. She wanted to forget the past, but seeing Min Hyuk only brought back painful memories. She thought that if things had been different, Min Hyuk would be happy with his wife and children. Seeing her despair, Min Hyuk was heartbroken and said he would leave, urging Yoo-young not to torment herself anymore. The next morning, Yoo-young visited the toll booth to gather documents. She confirmed that Do-hoon had indeed taken her father out of town and returned alone. Infuriated, Yoo-young went to confront Do-hoon at his company, but he was untouched by her anger. Do-hoon taunted Yoo-young, asserting that she would never achieve what she wanted. That evening, when Yoo-young came back, Min Hyuk was waiting for her with a heart full of hurt and resentment. Yoo-young agreed to go for a walk with him, as he was the only one who could bring her peace of mind. She yearned to be with Min Hyuk, even if it was just for a brief moment. Due to recent scandals, the company needed a scapegoat, and Secretary Kim volunteered for the task. Before heading to court, he met with Min Hyuk. The chairman had never fully trusted Do-hoon and had gathered incriminating documents about him. Secretary Kim handed these documents to Min Hyuk for future use. Min Hyuk discovered that Se-yeon and Do-hoon had been working together for some time. Enraged, Min Hyuk went to confront Se-yeon. She admitted her involvement, stating that everything she did was out of love for him. Se-yeon wanted Min Hyuk to realize that she was the one who had always been there for him, but Min Hyuk flatly rejected her feelings and apologized. At this time, Yoo-young also visited Do-hoon's restaurant. Despite Do-hoon's mother's refusal to let her in, Yoo-young insisted on entering. She placed the documents she had prepared on the counter. Just as she was about to disclose everything, Do-hoon showed up. He swiftly dragged Yoo-young out and threatened her with severe words. However, Yoo-young was no longer the vulnerable and naive person she once was. She scheduled another meeting with Do-hoon in court. The following morning, Min Hyuk brought documents to use as leverage against Do-hoon. It was revealed that Do-hoon had been involved in numerous illegal activities since joining the company. Min Hyuk offered Do-hoon a chance to make amends and change his ways, but Do-hoon showed no remorse for his actions. Instead, he went to Se-yeon and they devised a reckless plan. After a long day, Min Hyuk visited Yoo-young, and they spent time together quietly, finding comfort in each other's presence. From the documents Yoo-young had left behind, Do-hoon's father questioned him about what had transpired. He was shocked to see how cruel Do-hoon had become. He advised his son to reconsider his actions, but Do-hoon, blinded by greed, no longer heeded his father's advice. Even though Do-hoon was genuinely frightened, he went to Yoo-young, knelt down, and apologized. Yoo-young recognized that Do-hoon was only afraid of losing his possessions. Seeing this, Hae-ri also scolded him and drove him away. The following morning, Yoo-young went to court to submit her evidence. Do-hoon arrived to threaten Min Hyuk, brandishing documents that accused Min Hyuk's company of embezzling public funds. Dun also carried a phone so Yoo-young could overhear everything. He proposed a deal to exchange the documents for Yoo-young, but Min Hyuk urged her to trust him and proceed with her plan. Yoo-young decided to believe in Min Hyuk. Disheartened by Se-yeon's involvement with Do-hoon, Min Hyuk announced his intention to annul his marriage to Se-yeon, but President Han disagreed. Given the current circumstances, marrying Se-yeon was deemed essential to salvage everything. The next day, Yoo-young and Do-hoon were called to face each other. Do-hoon stubbornly continued to deny the evidence Yoo-young presented. When he stepped outside, a former colleague warned him not to underestimate Min Hyuk, as doing so could lead to his downfall. The news reported that Min Hyuk had accused Do-hoon of embezzling 6 billion won from the company. It was revealed that Secretary Kim and Min Hyuk had orchestrated this scenario in advance. Min Hyuk had previously given Do-hoon a chance, but Do-hoon had squandered it. Min-hyuk aimed to show Do-hoon that high ambitions often lead to a severe fall. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk's company faced severe losses, and stock prices plummeted, causing investors to withdraw. The company was on the brink of bankruptcy. Chairman Han pleaded with his son to save the company, a place that held the legacy of both his and Min-hyuk's late mother's efforts. Marrying Se-yeon was seen as the only solution to rescue everything. Min-hyuk's stepmother also approached Yoo-young, pleading with her to let Min-hyuk go. She promised that if Yoo-young complied, Min-hyuk would be able to preserve his career. The next morning, Yoo-young arranged to meet Min-hyuk. Though they didn't speak of it directly, both understood that this would be their final day together. They ventured to the suburbs, engaging in activities they had never experienced before, and decided to spend the whole day together. Min-hyuk did not shy away or evade the moment. Instead, he chose to kiss Yoo-young's scar, showing their mutual understanding and deep connection. The following morning, Min-hyuk awoke to find that Yoo-young had already gone. Despite his deep feelings for her, he knew he could not keep her by his side. He quietly proceeded to the wedding photo shoot with Se-yeon. Yoo-young, meanwhile, went to the restaurant to request time off from work. At the same time, the press arrived to question Do-hoon's parents about the embezzled funds. Yoo-young also appeared and openly exposed Do-hoon's true nature to the media. Do-hoon's mother disclosed that her son was still alive. She had forged a death certificate for him. The boy was now being adopted by a kind family, a fact that Do-hoon was unaware of. She had done this to cut off the connection between Do-hoon and Yoo-young. Although she loved her son dearly, she had separated him from Yoo-young. Yoo-young, enraged, demanded that the woman return the child to her. The following morning, Yoo-young went to see her son, only to find that he no longer recognized her. Overwhelmed with emotion, she wept and scolded Do-hoon, who was also deeply pained by the situation. When Do-hoon returned home, the police arrested his mother for falsifying a death certificate. In the detention center, she pleaded with Yoo-young to spare Do-hoon. She hoped that by revealing the truth about Yoo-young's son being alive, Yoo-young would feel grateful and let go of her resentment. However, Yoo-young was no longer naive. She wanted the woman to endure the same suffering her father had experienced. The adoptive mother of Yoo-young's son also came to plead with Yoo-young to allow her to continue caring for the child. She insisted she could not live without him and promised that when her son was older, she would explain everything to him. Yoo-young entered the home and observed that her son was being well cared for. When her son came home from school and saw his mother crying, he stood up to protect the adoptive mother and demanded that Yoo-young leave. As a longtime friend, Min-hyuk asked Se-yeon if she was truly happy. Although she had achieved her goals, Se-yeon felt deeply unhappy. Seeing this, Min-hyuk offered comfort to Se-yeon, who decided the next day to cancel the wedding and go abroad to pursue her dream of studying drawing. Min-hyuk also chose to go to an overseas branch to study and develop the company. Before leaving, he settled all debts and returned the bakery to Yoo-young. Upon hearing the news, Yoo-young rushed to the airport but chose not to interfere with Min-hyuk's departure. They simply walked past each other in silence. Se-yeon also came to bid farewell to Do-hoon, thanking him for his support and encouraging him to strive for a better life. Do-hoon's trial began, and he confessed to all his crimes. Though justice might come late, it would eventually prevail. Do-hoon faced consequences for his greed and lost many valuable opportunities. While the sentence was relatively lenient, he had to contend with the weight of his own conscience. 5 years later, Yoo-young reopened the bakery, and Min-hyuk returned as well. Their future together was certain, filled with hope and new beginnings. The film concludes here. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.